Welcome back. I'm Adam. I'm your host and your builder and all that other good stuff. And what we have here is our big boss challenge on the 72 Duster that we're, with this episode, hopefully finishing up the massive major sheet metal and framework construction on this car. So stay tuned. We hope you'll enjoy what you're about to see. All right, so what I just did now was I spent about an hour removing our inner fender, or our apron, however you want to address that part. It sets right up here, it goes from here to here. It's a unibody structural component, so there is a series of spot welds all the way down this rail, here, various spots on the back of the shock tower, up that little rail there, and pretty much that's it. There's a couple of bead welds, one here and one over there. You can break all that loose, get them all popped open, and then that whole piece comes right out. And this is actually a very good piece, with the exception of a couple places. To me, it's worthy enough to fix it, put some new sheet metal in, and reuse basically the original panel as it fits on here anyways. But there's another challenge that we have, and I've discussed it partially in other episodes and some of our lives, is some extensive frame rot that is in the area of our shock tower, control arm tower right here. It would be really, really hard to fix that with this in place and with this in place. So what I'm holding here is nearly identical to this one. The exception to it being that this one come off of a 1975 A-body platform, which is Duster Dark Swinger. Actually came off of a Dark Swinger, but it's the same from pretty much here forward in this boxed in area. Okay, the frame's the same, all that good stuff. The only real difference between this one and that one is 1973, about midway through 73 up to 76, when they discontinued production of these cars, was there's a larger, wider tab here, and it's pretty much the same here, but mainly this one, okay? And the problem with it is when you have this style, they tend to lose alignment. There's something about the strength of this one, it kind of, I don't know, it loses the alignment. Maybe it doesn't have the rigidity to it. So this little extra bit helps. They actually had a service bulletin for these cars, like around 73, where it put a little half radius piece of metal right there, and they welded it in, gave a little bit. Okay, so we're gonna lay this down for a minute. Now what I did before I do is I extracted it from the old frame rail carefully. I made sure to retain all the original tabs in this back part here, and that was a little bit of a difficult situation. We're going to put that as a bonus episode if you really need to do this, because not everybody's going to need this. Actually, very few will need it. So we'll do it as a bonus episode. I'll show you how I did it, and that'll be something you need to watch for. Okay. So right here, the problems with our frame rot is not so much out here, and it's not back here, although we do have a section we need to replace where it got really thin. But that's very easy. You can do that with actually the car sitting on the ground on its tires. But this right here, we have a U-channel frame. That's what this whole thing is. It's basically a heavy piece of sheet metal that's been bent into a U. And then on top of it, they put another shorter U frame to box it in. So that's what this is up here. And it continues all the way to the back. Okay. Same thing in here. Problem is, our rot is right here. It goes down in there, and we have some of it kind of starting back here, I believe. And the same thing is going on over there. I think there's 2 spaces there. This is pretty bad, and the shock tower itself is starting to rot where it basically touches that U-channel. And it's also rotting here. And there's a big chunk of rust that I couldn't see before. I couldn't get my head back in there, where it's flaking out and swelling up. So really, this whole section just needs to get cut out. And what we have to do is we have to take and cut this all out, remove it, and cut out part of the U-channel in the top of it. Replace it, and then take our new section there, that's actually an improvement, put it back in here exactly where it needs to be. The geometry needs to be right because this is your alignment. This is the way it tracks and all that stuff. So we'll have to show you how to do that, how to make marks and do some measurements to make sure everything's clocked in here right, setting in fore and aft and all that kind of stuff. But by the end of this will be all completely cut out, replaced with a new U-channel that we'll have to make from fresh metal, and then that new piece in. And I have to do the same thing over there too. All right, so before I go cutting this and starting getting into that U-channel, I wanted to make some measurements, and I figured this is a good place as any. This hole right here, see it kind of standing out there in the center. There's one of these on each side, okay, but right now, for the purposes of the measurements we're going to use, we want to just reference this side only. Okay, don't use this on the passenger side. We'll get to that shortly. But what I have here is a little rough drawing showing the driver's side and the rough layout of this. Now over here I put rail top, and when I say rail top, that's this level right here, okay? When it says U-cap, that's the actual part down inside of there. See how my fingers dip down in there? Probably about 3/4 or an inch. So the dotted line is the U-cap, just for reference in case we forget what we're doing or we forget the reference we're making here, okay? So from the rail top, I have an arrow going from the top of it to the center of that hole right here, okay? So it looks like dead on 3 1/4 inches, okay? That's what we got here. So that gives us kind of a vertical measurement, but then some of this might play in. So what we want to do is get one from the side also, because it could be too far forward and still be out, okay? It could be here good, but it might be over here, so we want it to go this way. So with that one, I reference this hole right here, which is one that I accidentally made while drilling out spot welds. It went too deep. So we have this hole here. You could go to this one if you didn't do this, which is likely you won't. You can go to this one here, or even like a corner of that up there and just mark it. But from that hole to here, I just put 10 1/4. So use that. So if you get both these in line, they should be where they need to go. Now these over here, where they overlap the frame, and here, these are the sides that overlap the frame, okay? The rest of it sets inside there and welds directly to the U-cap. So one thing you can do is make sure and reference your new one that you're gonna weld in and see how similar they actually are, okay? Now, like I said, on the new one, this is much wider, so you don't wanna reference this here because this is gonna overlap it quite a bit. So if you want, you could do things like make a measurement, because this is where it matters, here and inside of here and these. Okay, that's where your control arm sets in there and here. Kind of A-arms, as they say. So what we want to do, and look at this one here, is notice that this is a wider gap here, whereas this is just a direct bend around. So that's not going to be very accurate in making marks there, like a score or a grinder mark, a cutting wheel mark, to show where it needs to meet up to. One reference we do have on the other one, the new one, is there is a score across here where we removed the old frame rail from the car that it came from. So that should give you a good indicator of where this is, should be the top of the frame rail. Now this will have to get cut out also, but it should reference into the back of the frame rail, the U-channel, as long as you don't destroy it, so be careful on how you cut it. You can also make measurements on this one as well, maybe from the center of these oval holes and where they go down. You can even put a rod through here that's taut and doesn't bounce around, that goes all the way through all 4 of these, and make some measurements where they set in relation to this frame rail top or the bottom of the frame rail, whatever you prefer. Just find several points of reference before you cut, and then you'll be in a good shape when you go to put the next one in, because it'll pretty much have to go where you've referenced it. So what I did here was draw our depiction again, and I put this rod through it, which is what you see here, and I brought it over here. I accounted for the difference in this, the width of the new one, okay? So I went from the edge here, which is where the control arm will actually set, and came over, and the difference in that, see, this one is from that edge it is 1.5 inches. Okay, the other one from that same point is 2 5/8. So what I did was I came over 2 5/8, which is right here, and then came up from that point and went as square as I could, 90-degree angle off of this rod, and we have 3 inches right there. Okay, so when I put the other one in, I made a reference here that you would go to the side of the new one, go straight up 3 inches. This rod should meet up with that. And then over here, as it goes through, next to this one, this tab down here, we have 5/8 of an inch. So there might be a better way to do that one, but that one's working out pretty good for me there. We just want to make that reference, and in the case of what we're doing here, we're making a video, and we can reference the video to make sure, hey, is this where I need it exactly? Let's say we cut it out and we get kind of mixed up. You can make a video of it, or a really good depiction on your sketches, okay? So with that, we can pull this out, and we start going to town on it, and removing the bulk of this, and we get in the fine tuning of getting that U-channel out of there cleaned up. So there's the pieces all chopped out, and we still have basically the remains of it in here, but we just want to kind of make it available. So you might have to trim this out a little more. You get the wheel in there now, or whatever you prefer, a hot knife or something, but we really just want to cut this whole channel out. And there's kind of heavy pitting through here till about there. So we'll probably make that a mark, and then we can come down just below this one and slice that out. But I want to just kind of cut it through here first, down along the side and this side here, and then we can just kind of peel away the rest of this channel that's inside. All right, so fast forward a few days later, we're out in the shop again on a cold Saturday. The heat coming on, just came out here. We need to clean up this top of the frame rail because it still has little bits of the top U-channel, and it has what's left of the shock and control support tower. Okay, there's little strips through here. Some of them are, some areas of it are spot welded on, and then other areas are bead welded. So the bead welds are the easiest. You just have to kind of cut in and break that away. The spot welds, you just have to find them, and then we can cut them out with our cutter. You got 3 layers back here on the inside of the frame rail, and that's gonna include the actual frame rail itself, the large U-channel, and then the small U-channel, and then that shock tower. So they are in 3 layers. So you have to distinguish which layer you're trying to deal with. Okay, so you could really just kind of follow this outside here, and that's the one you want to keep. You don't want to destroy that. So as it comes up through here, it should be the middle piece. All right, the big thick piece will be part of the shock tower. That'll be on the inside, and then this inner U-channel obviously will be inner. It'll be on the inside. So you have 3 layers right there. Well, that one right down the middle, you want to save that as much as possible. Now we might have to section in a new piece. We'll have to see once we get this cleared away. But if anything, just try to preserve that so at least we'll have the shape of it as much as possible. And then on this side, you just have 2 layers. That's the top U-channel and then the frame U-channel. And that should be pretty easy. There is some spot welds. You can probably bust it maybe. Yeah, we can bust it from this one here, and one here. And the rest of it's kind of turned into the earth again. So we will probably have to kind of buzz that out and just carefully gnaw it away. We also have this part here and this part, which is part of the shock tower. It's bead welded here and here. Same thing there and there. And we have to break that away and smooth that out. Now we have marks here that kind of helped us determine where the inside face of the outsides of the control arm are, and I'll show you what I mean exactly. I took a cutting wheel and just put a little buzz mark there and did the same thing right here. Well, that tells us where this plane is, this flat plane. Put it down on there. You can see where the tab takes that same position. And the same thing here, this flat. So this flat and this flat are, I pre-marked it, but we might have to make some extended marks in case we start getting in here and cutting it up and it makes a confusion. So it's not a big deal if we do that or lose that, because we do have our other measurements to help guide us. But anytime you can have more for confirmation, it's not a bad thing.
And now, a classic Indiana car commercial.
Bob Jackson now has over 60 brand new Escorts in stock priced from $98 a month. $98 per month for one of America's most popular front-wheel drive cars. $98 per month for the over 40-mile-per-gallon Escort. Bob Jackson is also offering the lowest rate factor ever on new Ranger pickups and Bronco 2s. Don't miss the chance to drive a brand new Escort from $98 a month only at Bob Jackson. 2 locations, North 320 Coliseum Boulevard and East US 24 and 30 New Haven. You can't drive a new car for less anywhere else.
All right, now I've cleaned out this frame rail where it needs to be to start building back. Okay, all these little pieces, it was like the front tab of the control arm. We cut through the bead weld, and now we're good on that. We just kind of pried it off and then buzzed it down. Same back here with the little pieces from the control arm and shock tower. It's back here, we had to bust it loose. There's that weld that goes from here to here. That's where they welded this with the inner U-frame or the U-channel and then the shock tower itself. There was like a nice solid weld through there, and they do that on both sides. It's intentional. And you had to kind of buzz the top of it down and then try to break a couple spot welds, and then it pretty much just falls apart. That's what one of these was. It was back here. So those are out of the way. Our frame rail is exposed. There's a couple holes. That's where we can actually reuse the hole to plug weld the new one in. Okay, it'll be U-channel first. We'll have to build that, and then we can put our shock tower in. And it's actually so clean. I've cleaned it all up. It's so clean that it's to the point where this, or the one that will go on here, if you line it up, like with our little areas here that we have kind of marked with the cutting wheel, this piece needs to go behind this, so the ultimate will weld into this and the U-frame, or the U-channel. I keep saying frame. I think I'm thinking of the frame. But it's got to go back behind there like so. This has to go on the front. Try it this way. It needs to come over, obviously. Back. And it has to be, you know, kind of calculated according to our measurements we did. But that's about where it'll go. It probably needs to go another 1/4 inch down. But that's just a rough toss it in there and see what it does. So it fits. We're good on that. Need to muscle out of there like that. But we do have one continuous problem, and that will be the rust that's inside the frame rail and the other structural work in there. So what are we going to do about that? Let me show you what the rust is looking like here. Now it's certainly not eating into anything. There's some debris in there from where we broke some other pieces off. But we have this heavy scale and surface rust. None of it is threatening. But we'd like to kind of get that out of there, and we don't have the blaster available to us. So what are we going to do? Well, what we're going to do is I got an idea, and that is going to be with our favorite thing on this vehicle is the concrete and metal prep by Clean Strip. And here's 2 brand new bottles of it right here. All right, run about $18 each. You get a gallon per. So we got 2 gallons here, and that's what we have been using for all of our little stray parts that need to be derusted. Obviously not every bit of the inside of that frame rail is going to be treated, but we can do things later to help slow that down or stop it. And so just stay tuned for that in future episodes. We'll get into that and you'll kind of get an idea what I'm talking about. But I'm getting a little impatient and I want to get going on this job. I want to get it done. But I don't think what I'm about ready to tell you is going to be a bad idea. We just have to think about things. With that inner fender off there, I'm thinking about taking this one off, and it's really just going to leave these front two frame rails from about here forward on their own on top of this here. Okay. Now, the way these are engineered are simply amazing considering their age, but these guys knew what they're doing. All right. This is sheet metal and it's got some bends for strength, but that's really all that's holding that firewall to here and everything kind of square. All right. But at the same time, it's setting on the points of where the frame would be, so they know that's a load situation. And I'd like to go ahead and start working this thing off of here and then basically repeating what we got on this side. Okay, so I think we're going to do it. We're going to take the chance. I'll be your fall guy for this. If something does go wrong, take one for the team, so to speak, and then you'll know if something happens. But the way I'm looking at it, we've got all these frame rails hooked up to the torsion bar cross member. It's mounted to the side beam that goes over to the frame, the rocker panel, and then it's mounted obviously to the floor pan where we welded it up. And it's just setting evenly on top here, so the force is pushing straight down on it. But it's still very light. There's no weight in this car other than itself. All right. So I'm pretty sure there will be no movement. And obviously when you put it back, it all has to fit within the confines of this to here, and it should go right back. All right. Now I'm sure in some situations you can take maybe a extended jack and put it back here underneath where the T section, where the torsion bar cross member goes, and then the frame rail, put it directly under that on both sides. That would be a good insurance way of doing this. And we might do that. I might find some 4x4s or something around here we could brace under that and let the weight kind of set about as much on that as it does on these. But we'll give it a try. I'm going to start just knocking this thing out. If I don't seem to get any problems with it looking like it's going to move, then we're just going to proceed forward with it. And then you will be the connoisseurs of excellence if we get through with this. And I see guys cut these things off all the time with the suspension, lower suspension still on. And whatever. All right, I've been drilling away on this, and with these spot weld cutters, it's suggested that you take a punch, a hammer, pop out the middle of the spot weld, and that'll give the pilot bit some tooth to kind of start. And when it starts to make a little bit of a ball, then you can slowly depress the teeth into the metal, and it should, after a moment, start to grab. You just have to be steady, otherwise it'll walk off, and you might see that in a couple places. It still happen. I think over here you kind of see it. So you gotta be careful of that. And I've got the bulk of them busted out. I've got these three on the top. Looks like that's the max there. We got a handful here. Might not be all. I believe all these are, although it seems very committed to hanging on there. And through here, they're off. Now, the way the drill and the bit and all that stuff is, I think on this side, I started to do them over here. Well, on this one, I did them on the back side, on the inner fender well side, because, or the wheel well side, because you have all this obstruction here, and you can't get a straight shot on it. It'll want to walk off. So I went ahead and come on this outside and drove up there, and you can see the little spot welds just as well, especially if the undercoating and all that stuff is not thick, okay, or on there at all. We've got this side pretty much from here to here busted loose, and you have your little bead weld that holds this piece and this piece together. It's about 1.5 inches long. We'll have to cut that. Now the best way for me to do it is use my cutting wheel, but I'll have to bend this lip up temporarily so that I can get my wheel in there completely, cut it, and then I just bend this straight back down. All right, and you can square it up later. it shouldn't affect it too much. So once I get that cut, it should help me possibly release some of this. I think there might be a little mystery up here. I don't see any tack or I don't see any plug welds or spot welds up here except for this one, which I've already gotten. There might be one here, but we'll have to see. It's a little bit of a mystery on that. You usually have a little bit of that bead weld on this side too, on this back side of this. There's what looks like maybe a spot weld or a very small bead weld. It's not a full one though. So yeah, we'll just have to kind of work on this. I think I'll go with this first and try to manage breaking that loose. That's a mess. But it's out. But I've almost left you behind here on what we need to look at here. Now that it's out of the way, you can see the damage in here much better and why we really needed to take it out. It had to come out in order to fix this frame rail. So let me show you what we got. All right, so we walk over here and you can see some of the tabs are still left from the control tower here, shock tower, and it's not so bad here, y'all. You start to see pitting, and there's nothing really wrong with the pitting because it kind of continues down here, but it gets really aggressive up here. And let me bring our light over, get a little bit better touch on it. There we go. And I've already actually started cutting in here, but we had a rust hole right here. You can see that was developing, and then this is the big one. This is the one that really stood out to me. This is starting to get super thin in here, and the pitting is out of control around here, and you can see the inner channel, the small U channel, has pretty much disintegrated here on the top. So we'll have to drill out what we need to there, and you can see the massive pitting in the actual bead weld that goes across here. Okay, so we need to like on that side, trim this off without damaging the overall U channel of the frame. So these tabs where they bead weld them here, bead weld a little bit there. We want to get all this cleaned off of here and then cut the U channel out just like we done on that side there and try to treat what we can of it. So this will be a little bit of a process. And as far as if he was wondering when is the videos going to drop on this, this is why it's taken like 2 weeks. Usually I put out a video every week or so. If it's something productive, then I will do that. This is probably putting us back about, I don't know, 2-3 weeks from putting out a video consistent with the rest of the series. So that's what's happening. So you just need to take your time, do it right. I'm going to just start cutting this out just like we did over there and try to match what's going on there. That way we can come over here and get everything else under control. Here's this inner fender, which came off of this side. This one I took out. This was actually flipped the other way in the liquid, in the acid, and see, it's very rust free now. So we're working on that edge. We'll have a couple little spots to clean up, and then ultimately we'll have to replace the metal in there. I've been kind of turning these around and giving them a little bit of sauce here and there, just keep them wet, and they're working really good. So we'll get all that cleaned up, and the main thing you really want to get first is these. These need to be cleaned up and ready to go, so that when all this is cleaned up, you can start building back, okay? And then ultimately you can put your inner fenders back on, and then you'll have a done deal. So yeah, if you have limited tools, somewhat like me, where I'm pretty handy, pretty athletic with this one of these, you know, guard on, guard off, be safe. If you have it off, absolutely, you know, wear you something protective, but I would suggest leaving it on. But in some cases, we'll just leave it at that. Okay. Now, this, actually, I'll hold it up here. Notice how I've cut this in like an arrow pattern, and I've cut the exact same thing there. This side, I went more of a slash. I was able to get in there a little easier.
This sometimes depends on how much wear your wheel has. If it has a lot of wear, it's going to be a lot smaller. And if you can get the tilt in there between these rails, the tops or the sides, you can probably get in there. Now this one is a little tighter. It's not as rotted out this way or that way as it was on that side. So I was able to reach further out where this opened up right here and do the slash there, and with that cut in the side of the frame rail I can do a slash there. Now this is a little tighter quarters because you're between two uprights, and this was a little, this is more like the other side, but I was able to work this one in at this angle, and be careful not to go too much that way because you'll cut into that. And pretty much the same thing here, but I had to cut it. It just depends on your tool, will allow you more movement one way, but be careful with that because if you're not used to using it the opposite way, it's going to want to kick due to the direction. Okay, so you have to be very very adamant about holding it a certain way, keeping it out of harm's way. Okay, so we got the worst of it out, and I went ahead and broke the tab off. It's just going to be easier to just cut a new tab out and weld it on there. This is basically what it looks like. So we'll just keep this over on the side just to make a quick template off of it. We'll weld it there. This one actually survived. The spot weld had either rotted or wasn't very good to begin with, and I worked it off and just snapped it. So we'll just basically do that. You saw the what's left of the mice nest or whatever that was in here. It's full of sand from our blasting expedition. So this is, again, another plus because we can get this cleaned out, suck it out, get any rust dealt with when there, which it doesn't even look that bad compared to that side as far as the scale. At least on the sides it doesn't. But we still need to peel the lip of this inner U channel off, this one, and then the outside. And then we can kind of reverse this process. Okay, so we are cleared out. Taking it from here, the lip that spot welded along there, that's out. Same thing over here. And we did all that, just peeling and chipping and cutting and notching in ways that we do not destroy this. The only thing I really need to do is just take these welds here down, but I'm gonna make a little cut first to remind us where, like on that side, where this front ear for that shock tower, where it will set up against, okay? The kind of the inner surface here. I'll just put a notch there, and I'll do the same thing about right there. But this needs to be cleaned up first. I also made some other measurements. I ran them, the symmetry with that side, how well they match and perfect. From this corner right here, I found this little corner, this little edge. We have the same thing right here. You go from the very tip of that back, and then where the flat edge of that inner part that holds your control arm, 17 3/4 inches. I ran a piece of tape across there and got them as flush as I could, and that's what we got. So we're gonna be able to line them back up that way, make them perfect so that we don't have any tracking issues going down the road. And then we'll just have to get the rest of our measurements in queue.
Well, as the wind blows heavily outside, I've decided, with as much filming as I've been doing on this project, that I'm going to have to cut it in half. It's going to have a couple more videos. So we'll consider this the deconstruction video of this, and then we're letting all this soak again in our acid bath. So the next episode, look forward to us starting to get the rest of this cleaned up, putting it back together the way it belongs, and calling the heavy construction part of this duster done. Alright, so if you like what you've seen, make sure you like. And furthermore, if you really like it more than just thumbs up, make sure you sub. Give us a subscription. We're going to be doing more to this car, We're trying to get it back on the level where it's just a regular car, and we're almost there. And we get all this all in line and ready to go. We can start getting some primer and some color, and maybe get it back on its feet here soon. So thanks for coming.